Hey guys, welcome back to Prepping in Progress. I'm Steve and this is Prep Talk. Today we're going to be talking about justice in a world without rule of law and a few other things. So stay with us. Okay, so today's topic, justice in a world without rule of law. Before we get into it, there are a few other things I'd like to talk about. I know, here he goes. He suckered us in. Something that I've been thinking about for a little over a week and a half, 2 weeks. I thought about putting it in last week's video, and to be honest, I got distracted. My dad runs a Sabbath school class at a church, at his church. And he always opens each class with the same phrase. Blessings to share, concerns for prayer. And then the class will, people will raise their hands and say, well, my son is sick. He's in the hospital. Please pray for him. Or someone will say, I got a promotion. Or, my son got out of the hospital and is fine. And he'll write them down on a little note card. And then he will pray before they start class. And they pray over the concerns. And they pray prayers of thanks. So, from now on in the comments, if you have a concern that you would like the group to pray for or pray about, drop it and we'll do it. I haven't quite decided if that's going to be a private prayer thing or if we'll actually include praying for that item in the next video. Haven't quite figured out which way we're going to go. So there's that. Anyway, so I'm sorry about the lighting. I guess the sun's playing havoc outside. Justice in a world without rule of law. Where I'm going with this is within your group. Many of us talk about forming mags, talk about linking up with other like-minded people. And in order to do that, there are things that you really need to sit down across the table with those people. If you're serious about compound living, redoubt living, being on the same piece of property, being active together, you need to have the hard conversations now. Find out what is our legal system going to be if the rest of the legal system disappears. And you need to get that through your heads now. Okay? So, where we're going. What kind of system of justice do you plan to have? What happens when whether it's an accidental shooting or a intentional shooting or whatever, a member of your community dies? Are you going to just allow a family member to handle it? Or do you set up a quorum? Are you going to follow some of the biblical setups in the Bible, or look to the founding fathers. Um, and when you get into this, how do you handle mental illness? There's an awful lot in this justice question. I've been doing a lot of reading over the years while we've been getting into this lifestyle. And I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the entire scene perfectly. But I want to say it was the Glenn Tate 299 Days series. I want to say book 2, book 3, right after the event took place, the economic crash, he and his buddies that they called the team are pretty much the local police force. And a person has gone off their meds. Schizophrenic, could not get their medication because of the collapse, and the family was trying to take care of the person on their own. Person goes nuts, kills someone, and is holding another person at weapon point. The team goes in, couple of shots, it's over. Now today, in this day and age, if something similar happened, your police would go in, assess the situation. If shots are fired at them, they return fire, and either the person is sent to the hospital or the morgue. You then have a inquest. The officers are looked at by IA, and charges are pressed or dropped. If it's declared a good shoot, what do you do in a situation after that? After society is broken down, what do you do with your mentally ill? If I recall correctly in the book, there were some people who were put on basically hospice care, and there were others who just said, I don't have my heart medication, I'm not going to tell anyone, and they passed peacefully in their homes. They chose to do that. But we're looking at the justice side of things. My recommendation is going back to, you need to sit down with your group. And you need to figure out what each and every one of yours thought processes are and come together. My suggestion, and this, I'm a student of history. One of my ancestors was William Penn's brother-in-law, was married to William Penn's sister. And when William Penn went to the king to get the charter for the colony of Pennsylvania, he was there, and he was an original signer. Pennsylvania, it's mine. Seriously, though. And so they got their people together, and they came over here with this charter. And the charter was not just permission from the king to establish a colony in the New World. It was a compact, an agreement between the members of the group and the king as to what rules of law they would be following. Okay? And they could modify the rules of law slightly based upon the fact that they were going to be over the ocean and not able to go to the king for arbitration. I highly recommend you and your crew, whether you are a 2-family crew or a 20-family crew, sit down and form a written charter. Figure out what rules you're going to agree to keep. Now, yeah, there's always going to be that one person in the comment section who's going to say,
Yeah, but what if one guy refuses to go along with it?
That's why you have a charter of the group. You provide a quorum. You make decisions as a group. I'm an admin on a Facebook group, and very often when one admin comes to a member and says, look, you're being a bit abrasive, you are concerning certain members of the group, could you change your tone? It's not actually just that one admin coming to the person and saying that. That one admin has been contacted by a member. Several other admins have either seen what's going on, and they've all sat down and talked about it and come to a decision. And usually a 4 out of 7, 4 out of 6 is enough to get things going one way. Sometimes when there's a decision as to whether to add a member to the group, the admin in charge of approving and vetting people will actually go to the other admins and say, hey, I've got this application. They're from out of state. I'd like to sponsor them because of this knowledge that they have and the skills that they possess. They can help us, but they also want to learn how to make contacts in their own area, how we're doing it. And if the other admins say, go for it, then that person can be brought in. And I look to that as, I like the quorum idea. It doesn't have to be 100% unanimous. It helps. But to have a council set up and an X number of votes goes, so goes the council. So if you're idiot who says, well, I'm not going to submit to your form of justice even though I agreed with it, plays that card, there is a governing body. And there are people who will escort him off the property and give him what is fair, what the quorum decides what is fair, and send him on his way. Now, hopefully you all know each other well enough and are of a mindset to work together that when something that bad happens, you can sit down and go, okay, look, guys, I don't agree. Would you hear me out? And you're mature enough to go, could the group please take a look at who killed my son? And deal with it in a manner that you've already set up. Once again, I'm going back to setting up rules of law that you will abide by and you are willing to abide by. And what happens if it's an accident? Explain that it's an accident, work it out. And you decide with your group now if you're going to have an advocate system or just a tribunal or a single judge. But here are my 3 big things. Sit down and have the difficult conversations right now. You set down in writing where you stand. And 3, you establish your justice procedures now. And hopefully you'll find a way. In many of the books, anything from Matt Bracken to James Wesley Rawls, even Glenn Tate. Many of these people follow the constitutional model as their fix it, their America 3.0. In fact, in one of the Glenn Tate books, I believe, there is a scene after the collapse, the rebuilding, everything, where a young man is actually in a college class, open carrying. And one of the students says, "He has a gun." And the teacher calls the young man up to the front of the class and he says, "Let me see it." And he looks at it and says, "That's a very fine weapon. Where did you get it?" "Well, my father gave it to me." And he said, "Some of you are too young to remember the troubles that we went through. This young man is exercising his constitutional right to the Second Amendment. And you should all be proud of him for doing this. And you should all say thank you to him for doing this." It was similar. He commended the young man. And I do believe that we are going to have to, when times get tough, look at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Bible as our guides. I think we're going to have to go to some form of merciful justice system, something with established boundaries and parameters, with the capacity for mercy. There was a Pulp Fiction book series back in the 80s and 90s, the Ben Raines book series by John Stone. And it was a post-collapse thing. And the series went for so long that even John Stone was confusing his characters and events, and yeah. But at one point, briefly, the main character had established what he called the tri-states. It was an Idaho, Montana, and another state section that they had kind of taken over and established an extreme constitutional form of government. Every person was in the standing army, very Minuteman, very strict, hardcore justice system. And the situation comes down where a young man had been drinking and driving and killed an elderly person. And he laughed about it. And he even said, well, she was going to die anyway, ha ha ha. And the law required his execution. And the Attorney General comes into Raines' office and he's discussing it, and another person comes into Raines' office and he's advocating mercy, and finally Raines loses his temper. And he says, "Look, that young man is a scumbag who has not exhibited any remorse over what he's done. We could talk about bending the rules, showing mercy, if he had any remorse for his actions. But he doesn't. And so we're going to take him out and hang him." And in the book, that's what they do. And I've always found it interesting that it wasn't that, well, this is the law and this is how it's going to be. It was a case of he's shown no remorse and no reason to show mercy. No reason we should. So I do believe that there is a place in our future systems for mercy. Justice tempered with mercy. And depending on what you and your friends, because I assume the people that you are teaming up with are going to be your friends and people you know and respect. It's going to depend on what you guys are willing to live under and want to live under. Now I want to touch on one other thing. Now we've done a whole prep talk, I believe, on this before, about personal property and how if the property owner says, you can't have a gun on my property, hey, guess what? You have to respect that. And of course, we got the clan that said, well, I'm going to carry no matter what. It's my right. Well, your rights end where his begin. And we're going to go there again. I'm friends with quite a few people who keep Torah. I've been exploring it myself. Those friends of mine have said there will be no pork or the eating of unclean meats on their property. If rabbits are kept, they are kept as food for other animals, or as bait, or dog food. Really. So if you're mag and you don't keep Torah, or let's say you do but your wife doesn't or your husband doesn't, but you end up on their property, now you're mag, your team. At that point, yeah, I would say that property rules do apply. If John says no eating of unclean meats on my property, if John says on my property we keep these commandments, you need to accept that that's how you're going to live on his property. And if you're fine with it but your husband isn't, your husband's free to leave. Let's be honest, because respect his rights, respect your rights, but you're taking refuge in his castle. You are trading some of your rights for his castle walls. And these are things you need to sit down and talk with your team members about now. Personally, my parents are vegetarians. Kim and the kids eat meat. They eat vegetarian when we go to visit my parents. When my parents come to visit here, we actually have 2 sets of dishes, cooked dishes, as well as serving dishes. And when Kim wants to cook meat, she uses these dishes over here, and these dishes over here are used for my parents. And then my parents are served on this set of plates because meat has never touched them. And vice versa. My mother has never had meat cross her lips. Okay? And that's just the way it is. That's how we deal with the problem in order to facilitate a happy home and a happy life and a happy coexistence with people who don't quite see eye to eye within their belief systems. But you have to sit down and you have to get all of this straightened out now and establish what your societal rules and your code of justice is. Because if you're going to allow vigilante justice, you're going to break down real quick. And you're going to end up with Hatfield and McCoy's, where he kills so and so, you kill him, his son kills you. And within your tribe, your community, your mag, suddenly you have chaos. And I thought that's what we joined together. We decided to mutually assist group up to avoid. So there it is. I encourage you, go to the writings of the founding fathers. Look up the differences between justice and vengeance. Go to whatever books you hold sacred. And I'm not just talking religious books. Shoot, the writings of Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin are look up liberty. And analyze liberty and justice. Look at when you're going to deprive someone of their liberty. Yeah. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Think about that as you prepare to sit down with your people and figure out where you're going to go with your justice system. And once again, I encourage you, I absolutely positively encourage you to consider doing a charter for your team. And figure out where you want to be in your leadership roles. And figure out why you want to be there. Okay, guys. I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Two last things. Conflicted. You have your food storage in place, 6 months worth of food and water for you and your family. One of your friends comes knocking saying that his home has been ransacked. They have nothing but the clothes on their backs and they need a place to stay. Your friend has very few useful skills, and taking them in would cut down your supply timeline in half. At this time, there is no way you can replenish your supplies without risking your own life, and in one way or another. Would you open your home and your supplies to your friend and his family, or not? Tell us why. Another one that I really want you to think about is this one. So address whichever one you want in the comments. Your bug out group has traded with others in the region for months, and all of you have decided to combine forces. There are about 30 people in your group, half of which are children. So you got 15 adults, 15 kids. The combined total of the groups that are looking at linking up is 600 people. The leadership is forming and roles are getting established. How much power and influence would you want in this newly formed community, and what role do you see yourself fulfilling? Throw that out there, more because of what we have been talking about is more forming groups than justice, but it is justice system and forming a justice system in the end. So throw that out there. Also, if you have blessings to share, concerns for prayer, drop them here. And you can even put in if you'd want us to tell us what you think. If we should publicly pray or just add you to the group prayer list. How's that? And if you don't want to drop it in public, reach out to us either through the Prepping in Progress Facebook page or preppinginprogress@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, guys. The links are down below in the description. We'll talk to you soon.